What happens when four people with their own deeply personal experiences of suicide come together? One of the most extraordinary conversations you'll ever see. I'm Laura, and along with three others, we each shared a letter we'd written to a loved one or ourselves for our new campaign, What If a Conversation About Suicide Could Save a Life? Then we talked about what we've learned on our journey and what we want others to know. Because talking about suicide is the best way to prevent it from happening. This is The Conversation from Suicide Prevention Scotland.
Dear Megan, one of my closest friends. In 2017, as you know, I went through a severe depression. I couldn't eat, I could hardly sleep. I tried to shut myself off from others and no longer enjoyed the things I used to. But that wasn't the full picture. Away from others, including you, I would cry every day, sometimes many times a day. I lost hope and had decided suicide was the only way out. I'd made a plan for when, where and how, and I was absolutely sure I would do it. I felt I needed to do it. I believed that it would be the only way to end my suffering. You knew I was struggling and would encourage me to speak about how I was feeling. You didn't judge, you didn't criticise, but you were there to listen and make me feel a little less alone. All I wanted to do was go to bed and shut off from the world, but somehow you convinced me to come hill walking up Ben Lawers with you one weekend. The following weekend I decided to do another mountain, and then another the following weekend, and so on. Being out in the fresh air, doing something active with a very simple focus of walking to the top of the mountain and down again, made me feel a little bit better. Standing on top of the mountain looking out gave me perspective and the headspace I couldn't find below the clouds. During those walks we would talk, and you were one of a small group of people I was able to offload to, and that made a huge difference. The more hills I climbed, the more I opened up about how I was feeling, the more hope I found. It wasn't easy, there were setbacks along the way, but in time I recovered from experiencing suicidal thoughts. I may not have made that recovery if you weren't in my life, and I'm so very grateful you were there. You introduced me to the beauty of Scotland's hills, but more than that, you were a supportive, caring and non-judgmental friend when I really needed it most. Thank you, Megan. Love, Ross.
That's lovely.
That's beautiful. So had you never hill walked before?
Not really. Funnily enough, I'd went on a hill walk with Megan probably a few months before that in the middle of winter, completely unprepared for what I was doing. I hated it. Like I really didn't like it. And I think it was in the summer, and she suggested it. And like I said at that time, I just wanted to stay in bed. I didn't want to do anything. I don't know how she really managed to convince me, but for whatever reason, I just became a kind of a focus and something I could do. I sort of remember that time where I tried to do everything to try and just sort of kind of calm my mind a bit. My anxiety was just so high. I was trying to maybe watch a film or go to a sports match or things, and I just couldn't engage with it at all. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So looking back, I don't know, for whatever reason, hill walking was just something I could just focus on. And if you're outside sort of with other people, you could just sort of open up in a way you maybe wouldn't if you were sitting watching a film or watching a match or something. But yeah, just made a huge difference.
I totally understand that feeling of just that having a simple focus. You know, it's that thing of, right, okay, all I need to do really is just walk up that hill and down again. Like, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it's like everything, when you're in that headspace, everything is difficult. And like, even if someone said to me when I'm in that headspace, how do you make a cup of tea? Explain how to make a cup of tea. I couldn't explain how to make a cup of tea. So something as simple as, it's obviously using a lot of energy walking up a hill and back down again, but just that kind of, it's that, again, that cliche, isn't it? But that little one step at a time. And even though sometimes you probably, like maybe sometimes you didn't get to the top of the hill, but it's like, oh, okay, well, next time I'll get to the top of the hill. And
I think you talked about how much energy it takes to even make a cup of tea, and I think that's what other people don't always see, is how much energy it takes you just to get out of bed or to make a cup of tea or to get to the end of the day, which must be really exhausting for you.
Yeah, I really struggle with that a lot of the time. That's why, you know, you hear so much about how exercise is so good for you, and it is. But with, like, I have quite a lot of different issues, and sometimes I just wouldn't be able to climb a hill, for example. There's just no, I have like chronic fatigue as well, and so I couldn't. Other days I could, but so what I've managed to kind of tell myself on good days is that it's okay if it is just a short walk, even to the shop. Sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed that day. Obviously, you know, that's not ideal, but that's just the reality of it, which I think it is hard sometimes. Like, I know that, like, in my real times of struggling, and even now I find it hard when I think, what is it that I'm missing, you know, that I'm not in recovery of whatever recovery is. But I suppose recovery is just still being here, isn't it?
It is. It's a bit like a journey, isn't it? It's not going to happen overnight, and it's about just taking that next step, whatever that might be. And then some days that's just not possible as well. And that's okay as well, because actually the worst thing you want to do when you're supporting someone who's feeling suicidal is make them feel guilty, or, you know, add shame or judgment or anything like that. So, you know, sometimes it is just okay to not be okay, and just say, okay, maybe I'm not okay today, but tomorrow I'm going to try and do whatever, take a walk, you know, do whatever,
I think,
you know, go to the gym, whatever would suit,
just,
you know, it depends.
Having that thought that tomorrow I might, whatever, just tomorrow I might. I mean, I love reading, but when I'm in a brain fog, I can't read. And then, so what I used to do is, because I love reading, think, oh, but I need to try and do this, I need to try and do that, and then go, oh, this is another thing I fail at, I can't even do that. So sometimes it's like, actually, today I'm just going to cuddle my cat or cuddle my dog, because that's all I can do today. And I will still beat myself up about that. But
that's the thing, it's self-compassion, isn't it? It's actually saying, you know, just having a bit of kindness towards yourself. And no matter what it is you do, as long, you know, if it's something, whatever that is, even a few steps.
What really comes across in your letter is that it didn't happen overnight. It was a kind of step-by-step thing. So it wasn't about your friend fixing everything for you. It was just about giving you that chance to find some hope. And those walks continued. I really like the way that you were able to talk without having to sit down at a table, having to be face to face with someone. I think there's really something important about being outside and not face to face with someone that makes it much easier as well.
So it's like less confrontational. If you're sitting in front of somebody, it can feel confrontational, whereas if you're side by side, you're not even making eye contact, you're sort of just like talking a bit more openly, and I think that's a huge thing. And I think just on the idea of sort of like negative thoughts that can kind of follow you when you're trying to do things like watch a film or read a book or things like that. I think if I was to try to describe to somebody what it was like for the most part kind of going through that period, who's never gone through anything themselves before, it's almost just like you've got somebody that's following you constantly with a megaphone that's just constantly like shouting in your ear. Negative thoughts, intrusive thoughts, suicidal thoughts, and you cannot get away from it. It's just you're just wanting 5 minutes, a minute just away from that to kind of quiet it a bit. And I think with the hills, that was something where I can still remember looking back in that period where I'm walking up a hill. I can remember the hill that I was doing in Angus and kind of going up, and that sort of feeling like those kind of thoughts were still coming in, but there were times where they wouldn't be there. So it was just that sort of kind of gradually trying to get away from that, and that things would improve, and that sort of voice that was in my ear would just quiet, like, I find, like, gradually kind of pull back, and then that could make that recovery, is how I'd maybe describe to somebody.
I think that's a really good description,
definitely.
but also really struck how exhausting that must be for you. You know, to have those intrusive thoughts consistently makes every part of your day difficult. And I know for Dylan that certainly was true. And I think only those people closest to you really see that struggle. But I think that, again, that's why it's important to use the words suicide and to ask people, just to give them that opportunity. But what a great way to do it, by help walking. Really nice.
And you say as well in your letter about the more you were doing it, the more you found you were able to then open up and speak to people about how you were feeling as well, which is amazing, really. It's really good.
I suppose it's just that time, where you kind of just, it gives you that sort of that release valve a little bit, where you can get away from those intrusive thoughts and negativity to try to think about things a bit more clearly than you have been. Because I remember just being in that space, whether in my bed or trying to go into work and things like that, where it was almost like all consuming. You couldn't kind of get away from the negative thoughts, and I was not thinking clearly at all. But at least with the mountains and being beside people, talking to people, you start to just feel a bit more like kind of as if you're kind of getting back to normal a little bit more. With Megan, it was really a sense of that non-judgmental side, where I felt like I could trust her I could say things to her that how I was feeling, and that she wouldn't, think negatively of me or tell other people or something like that. It's just that I could sort of have that trust that was there, and all she would really kind of need to do was just sort of listen and make me feel like less alone in what I was going through.
Because it's so, like, you feel so vulnerable anyway when you're in that space, don't you? And you just feel like, because it's so suffocating, and you can't breathe, and you just feel all caught up in it. But it is such a vulnerable thing to say, listen, this is how bad I'm feeling, because the shame and the guilt and everything. But I think that must have been so wonderful about doing it in that scenario as well, because you've got time, it's that kind of, and space. Time and space to have a really just an honest conversation, and I suppose maybe it helped the fact that you weren't overthinking like how to word it, because you were just in nature and just like taking one step at a time and just being honest.
And that walking and talking, and just that going with the flow as well. And I think having people to talk to that didn't make you feel worse on top of what you're already feeling is absolutely crucial, because it's really hard to know or understand how someone else is feeling, isn't it? And even if they do say it's just about listening, isn't it? And not trying to come up with the answers, or not trying to divert that individual a certain way, one way or the other, because you just don't know. Everyone's different, and maybe their journey of recovery is going to be different, and maybe how they move forward and take that next step could be different. So it's trying to kind of support, but in a very kind of non-judgment way.
I think the thing about judgment with me is that, like, I am my biggest critic. Nobody will ever judge me the way that I judge myself, and I think that's a recurring theme in a lot of people that have experienced what we've, like the thoughts that we've had, is that you're constantly feeling not good enough, and that just that horrible that when you said about it's like having that awful thoughts, like that someone just shouting in your ear all the time. It's so horrible. It's so exhausting. But it's like having this judgmental little critic constantly saying, well, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are to be doing this, to be doing that? Why are you sad? Why are you crying? Why are you so tired?
So then it goes on again, so it's like a repeat cycle, isn't it? Yeah.
And so that, I think the thing that always, I try to remember, is that nobody's ever going to judge me the way that I judge myself. And if they do, well, okay,
move on to the next
take
person.
it there, because I'm already judging myself, so it's probably not going to be any worse. But I think that's the most compassionate thing a friend or a loved one can offer someone in, not even just in suicidal crisis, but in that's having issues with their mental health, is to just be non-judgmental and just give them the time and the space and the compassion to be themselves and not have to put on the front. And that's obviously what Megan offered for you, was you could just be Ross walking up a hill with her. You didn't have to be anything else.
I think that's what can be hard for friends and relatives, to watch a loved one who's struggling, and your immediate reaction is to want to fix it and make it better. And that can be hugely frustrating. because you just want everything to be better for them. You can see how hard they're struggling, and you want it to be better. You won't have the answers, but I guess what's much more important than trying to fix that is just what you're saying, is to listen in a non-judgmental way and let them speak at their own pace and give them some kind of hope.
It's that patience, isn't it? Because it's not a quick recovery either, is it? It takes time. So it's just about being patient and just listening and being there with them. And sometimes some people just don't want to talk in a particular moment. And you have to accept that. And there is a difficulty though, because I know what I'm like sometimes. Do you know what I mean? You just want to make everything better as soon as possible. And actually that's they've got to kind of support that individual to find their own way forward and what suits them, but have you there with them, Hugs help as well a lot. Hugs are good. And just being there with someone does make a difference.
But it's interesting though, isn't it, that if someone had an illness, like someone was diagnosed with kidney failure, or a kidney problem or a heart problem, you wouldn't go in and go, well, right, do you know what, this is what you need to do to fix that. However, in my experience, I've had a lot of people like, oh, you're feeling a bit down in the dumps or whatever, and they go, well, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to do. And as we said earlier, like it's not, like even what will help me one day might not help me the next day. So it is, it's how we react and interact with people regarding, and seeing mental health issues as important and as valid as a physical issue. And you wouldn't run in and expect to be able to fix that, but you would listen to somebody say, I'm really worried about this diagnosis of having diabetes or whatever, and you wouldn't go, well, this, you might tell them not to eat sugar, but and I think if we were a bit more compassionate in our approach to ourselves as well, for those of us that unfortunately have live with this on a daily basis or have in the past, because I'm sure as well sometimes you go, oh, I can't believe I felt like that, or
it must be scary though, feeling with those intrusive thoughts and living with that every day, and make you feel scary or panic.
It was just it was horrible. It was just like literally I want 10 seconds away from this guy with a megaphone in my ear just shouting at me. That's kind of just how it would feel for somebody. Absolutely tiring and exhausting, but speaking about it made a big difference.
It's amazing.
I think that the getting better is not such a clear path as it is with a physical illness perhaps, and I think it's having that patience, whether that's your patience or a relative's patience or friend's patience, but to know that it is going to get better is really important. So having that friend there to speak to was the thing that gave you hope that it would get better. But just having patience is really important.
And that's the thing, if you don't have, if you do try and speak to someone and they're not responding in a way that they feel they can, be there for you, then it's trying someone else and speaking to someone else and trying to find that person that will be able to have the patience and will be able to sit and listen to you, and to keep trying. Like we was talking earlier, it's about getting the right person. And just keep trying,
I think that's actually really important, because I think if you've found the courage or the strength to ask for help, and it doesn't seem to come, not to be discouraged by that, but to find someone else, ask again.
And that's, like you said, that inner critic as well. It's having that compassion for yourself, and it's that kind of self-blaming and kind of on top of what you're already feeling anyway, and then you feel bad. It's that vicious circle. So how can you get out of that? And talking will make a difference, definitely.